Your name, miss? The maitre d' at Belmont's has a smile as stiff as his collar. He looks at my simple black dress, silently appraising the value of my leather clutch. I meet his eyes with a level stare. Matilda Bishop, I say. My name carries a weight in this city that he doesn't recognize yet, but he will. Before he can respond, Mom's voice cuts through the amber glow of the chandeliers like a dull blade. Oh, there she is! Finally! Heads turn. I feel the weight of a dozen strangers' gazes as I walk toward the finest table in the room. My heels click against the marble, a steady, rhythmic countdown. My family is all there. Mom, looking fragile, my cousin Winton, sprawling in his chair like he owns the floorboards, his wife Melanie twisting a diamond bracelet that costs more than my first car. Godfrey and Jessica are already half deep into their second bottle of wine. And tucked against my ankle, hidden by the long white tablecloth, is Macy. She's a small white and gray Shih Tzu I rescued 3 years ago. I'd had to bring her because the sitter canceled, and Mom had insisted this was a family emergency meeting. Macy's chin is resting on my shoe. She looks up at me, her dark eyes wide and knowing. She's the only one in this room who actually loves me. This table is for family, Winton says, his voice loud enough to make the couple at the next table flinch. Go find a spot outside, Matilda. Winton is just joking, Melanie chirps, her voice dripping with sugar-coated venom. He isn't. I don't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I grab a heavy chair from a nearby table and drag it over. The legs scrape against the floor, a harsh, screeching protest that ruins the soft piano music. I sit. You're late, Mom says. She won't look at me. She's fiddling with her ruby pendant, the one Dad gave her before cancer took him during my sophomore year. Traffic, I lie. I don't tell them I sat in my car for 20 minutes, Macy's head in my lap, wondering why I still show up to be the punchline of their jokes. The theater begins. They order the Wagyu, the 2015 Bordeaux, the lobster. They talk about luxury spas and exotic vacations, their voices rising in a frantic performance of wealth. I watch them. I listen. I feel Macy's soft fur nudge my ankle under the table, a silent reminder, stay grounded. The trap snaps shut when the waiter drops the leather-bound check folder. $2,200. Thanks for dinner, Matilda, Winton says, leaning back with a smug grin. We figured since your little company is doing so well, you wouldn't mind. Family helps family, right? I look at the bill. I look at Mom, who is suddenly very interested in her napkin. I look at Dawn, who is busy checking her makeup in a compact, avoiding my gaze entirely. They didn't invite me to dinner. They invited my bank account. I feel a small, protective huff against my leg. Macy. She sees the hands reaching for my pockets before I even move. She knows they're predators. I slowly pick up the check. The table exhales. They think they've won. I look at Winton, then at the bill, and then I set it down, not in front of myself, but directly in his lap. I'm not your ATM, Winton, I say, my voice a quiet, freezing wind. The silence is absolute. Winton's face turns an ugly, mottled red. You'd really let your own mother be humiliated in public? He hisses. I look at Mom, then at him. I reach down and pick up Macy, tucking her securely under my arm. She licks my hand once, a tiny, rough seal of approval. I'm letting adults face the consequences of their choices, I say, standing up. What price would you put on self-respect? Because mine just went up. What would you do if your family tried to use you? Drop a comment below and don't forget to subscribe. The walk to the car is silent, save for the rhythmic click of my heels and the soft jingling of Macy's collar. The cool night air of the parking lot feels like a mercy after the suffocating, perfume-heavy heat of the restaurant. I'm halfway to my SUV when the heavy glass doors of Belmont's fly open behind me. Matilda, stop right there. I don't stop. I keep walking, shifting Macy's weight in my arms. She's quiet, her small body warm against my ribs, but I can feel her heart racing. She knows the tone of that voice. Everyone knows the tone of Winton's voice when he doesn't get his way. He's running now, his expensive loafers slapping against the asphalt. He rounds the back of my car, cutting me off. His face is no longer mottled red, it's a deep, bruised purple. Behind him, Melanie is scurrying to keep up, her face a mask of panicked indignation. "You think you're so smart," Winton sneers, stepping into my personal space. "Leaving your mother in there to deal with the manager? Do you have any idea how that looks?" "It looks like a group of people who ordered a $2,200 dinner without the means to pay for it," I say. I reach into my purse, my fingers steady as I find my keys. "It looks like a consequence, Winton. Get out of my way." "We are family," Melanie shrieked, her voice reaching a pitch that made Macy tuck her head under my chin. "Godfrey and Jessica are in there trying to negotiate with a man who looks like he's about to call the police. And all because you want to be petty?" "Petty?" I let out a short, sharp laugh. "Is it petty to refuse to be robbed? Because that's what this was, a coordinated heist disguised as a welcome home dinner." "Mom has medical bills, Matilda," Winton says, his voice suddenly dropping to a low, manipulative hum. "She's sick. We didn't want to tell you like this, but we're desperate. That's why we were splurging. It was supposed to be her last good night before the treatments start." I pause. My heart skips a beat. A cold dread settles in my stomach. I look past them toward the restaurant entrance. Mom is standing there, leaning against the doorframe, watching us. She looks small. She looks fragile. But then I notice the way she's twisting her ruby pendant. It's a tell, a nervous habit she's had since I was a child, one she only uses when she's hiding a secret. Not a secret about health, a secret about a lie. If she's sick, why is she wearing a new $5,000 tennis bracelet under her sleeve? I saw it when she reached for the wine, Winton. I might be busy with my little company, but I'm not blind. The silence that follows is heavy. Winton's eyes dart to Melanie. Melanie looks at the ground. "Checkmate," I whisper. I unlock the car. I place Macy into her harness in the passenger seat, making sure she's secure. I don't look back at them as I climb into the driver's seat. I don't look back as I pull out of the lot, leaving the shadows of my family standing under the flickering fluorescent lights of the parking lot. I have a company to run. I have a life to live. And as of tonight, I have a phone number to block. The city lights blur into long neon streaks as I drive. Macy has settled into her seat, her chin resting on the edge of her harness, watching the world go by with a calm I envy. My phone is face down in the center console, vibrating with a frantic energy that tells me Winton and Melanie haven't given up. I don't go home. I go to the office. The Bishop Group headquarters is a monolith of glass and steel that stays lit 24/7. When I walk through the lobby, the security guard gives a respectful nod. He doesn't see a little entrepreneur. He sees the woman who signed his paycheck. I reach my office on the 42nd floor and set Macy down. She immediately trots over to her sheepskin rug in the corner, waiting for her routine. I open the small mahogany cabinet by my desk and pull out a high-quality marrow bone, the good kind, organic and marrow-filled. "Here you go, girl," I mutter. "At least someone's getting what they asked for tonight." She takes it with a gentle wag of her tail, the soft thump-thump against the carpet the only sound in the room. I sit at my desk and finally flip my phone over. 14 missed calls. 22 texts. I scroll through them. Jessica is threatening to call the tabloids. Godfrey is playing the "your father would be ashamed" card. But it's the text from Mom that stops my breath. "Matilda, Winton told me what happened. He said you insulted me in front of the whole restaurant. I don't know who you've become, but your father's house is being foreclosed on. We needed that money for the mortgage, not just dinner. Please, don't let us lose the only thing he left us." I lean back, staring at the ceiling.
The guilt tries to claw its way up my throat, but then I remember the ruby pendant. I remember the lobster. I remember the way they laughed while I dragged my own chair to the table. If the house was in trouble, why were they at Belmont's? I pull up my internal database. Aside from the Bishop Group, I keep a private investigator on retainer for corporate due diligence. Tonight, the due diligence is personal. I type out a quick message. Find out the status of the Bishop estate on Oakhaven Lane. Foreclosure notices, liens, everything. Now. While I wait, I open a new file on my computer. I've spent years playing defense with this family, shielding myself from their barbs and their monthly traditions that always ended in a bill. No more. If they want to play the family business game, I'll show them how a real CEO handles a hostile takeover. I start drafting a formal letter, not from a daughter, but from the legal department of the Bishop Group. Macy looks up from her bone, her ears perking at the aggressive sound of my typing. She tilts her head, letting out a small, encouraging woof. "You're right," I say, a cold smile touching my lips. It's time to stop hiding. If they want to treat me like a stranger with a checkbook, I'll start treating them like a bad investment. My computer pings. The report is in. I click it open, and the blood in my veins turns to ice. The house isn't in foreclosure. It was sold 6 months ago to a holding company owned by Winton.
The glow of the computer monitor reflects in my eyes, casting sharp, cold light across the office. I stare at the digital deed. The holding company, W Property Ventures, bought the family home for a fraction of its value back in October. Winton didn't save the house, he stole it. And Mom, she must have signed the papers. Whether she knew what she was doing or was just another pawn in Winton's game didn't matter. The betrayal was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest. Beside my desk, Macy senses the shift in my energy. She abandons her bone and trots over, resting her chin on my knee. I reach down, my fingers tangling in her soft fur, drawing strength from her quiet presence. Unlike the people I share blood with, she doesn't want a seat at the table, she just wants to be by my side. "They're playing me for a fool, Macy," I whisper. "They think I'm still the little girl who cried when they left her out of the vacation photos." I pick up the desk phone and dial a number I know by heart. Dawn, my head of security, and a woman who can find a needle in a haystack, and then tell you who dropped it. "Matilda, it's 1 a.m. What's wrong?" Dawn's voice is crisp, instantly alert. "I need a full audit on Winton's holding company. And Dawn, I need you to find out where my mother has been living for the last 6 months. If the house was sold in October, she's not at Oakhaven Lane anymore." "I'm on it," Dawn replies. "Give me an hour." I spend that hour pacing the floor. Every time my personal phone buzzes with a text from Jessica or Godfrey, I ignore it. They're white noise, background radiation. At 2:15 a.m., my office door opens. Dawn walks in carrying a thin manila folder. She looks at Macy, who gives a friendly tail wag, then slides the folder onto my desk. "Your mother is living in a 2-bedroom condo in the East End," Dawn says, her expression unreadable. "It's owned by Winton, but here's the kicker. Winton is charging her rent, market rate. He used the money from the sale of her house to pay off his own gambling debts in Atlantic City." I feel a slow, burning heat climb my throat. It isn't just a scam, it's elder abuse. Winton has stripped my mother of her only asset, and now is using her to guilt-trip me into subsidizing his lifestyle. "And the medical bills?" I ask. "Non-existent," Dawn says. "I checked the insurance records. She had a physical last month. She's as healthy as a horse. The ruby pendant she was wearing? It's a fake. The real one was sold at an auction house in January." I look down at Macy. She looks back, her dark eyes reflecting a loyalty my family can't even simulate. My mother sold Dad's last gift to her and then had the audacity to use his memory to try and milk $2,200 out of me for a steak. "Matilda," Dawn asks, "what do you want to do?"
I lean back in my leather chair, the coldness finally settling into a hard, unbreakable resolve. The revenge isn't going to be loud. It's going to be surgical. I want you to buy W Property Ventures, I say. Dawn blinks. Matilda, that company is a mess of debt. I know. That's why we're going to buy the debt first. I want to be Winton's landlord by the end of the week, and I want a private meeting with Carl, his primary lender. I stand up, gathering my purse and signaling to Macy. She jumps up, ready for the next move. Winton wants to play family, I murmur, heading for the door. Fine, I'll show him what happens when the head of the family decides to downsize.
The sun hadn't even cleared the horizon when I stepped out of my office building. The city was a bruised purple, the air smelling of ozone and wet pavement. Macy trotted beside me, her little paws pattering rhythmically against the concrete. She didn't mind the late hours. As long as she was with me, the world was exactly as it should be. "Let's go, Macy. We have a bank to visit." I didn't head for the sleek glass towers of the international banks. I drove to a nondescript brick building in the suburbs, the headquarters of a private lending firm run by a man named Carl. Carl was the kind of person who specialized in difficult loans, high interest, high stakes, and no mercy. He was exactly the kind of man Winton would turn to when his gambling debts outpaced his sense. I arrived before the doors even opened. When Carl finally walked up, jingling a ring of keys, he stopped dead at the sight of me leaning against my SUV. "Matilda Bishop," he said, his eyes narrowing. "You're a long way from the 42nd floor." "I heard you're holding some paper that's starting to smell, Carl," I said, not moving. I reached down and gave Macy a quick scratch behind the ears, specifically the liens on Winton Property Ventures. Carl sighed, the sound of a man who had spent the night looking at red ink. "Winton is a month behind, again. He's a charming guy, Matilda, but he's a disaster." "He's not just a disaster, he's my cousin, and I'm here to take him off your hands." We went inside. The office smelled of stale coffee and old cigars. Macy sat perfectly still by my feet, her eyes fixed on Carl as if she could smell the desperation on him. I didn't haggle. I didn't negotiate. I laid out a cashier's check that covered Winton's debts in full, plus a convenience fee for Carl to transfer the titles immediately. "You're bailing him out?" Carl asked, hovering a pen over the transfer papers. "No," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "I'm buying him. There's a difference." By 10 a.m. I was back in the city, sitting in a quiet park across from the condo where Mom was living. I watched her through the windshield. She was walking toward the mailbox, her movements slow and exaggerated. She looked like a woman who knew she was being watched. My phone buzzed, a text from Winton. "Matilda, Mom is crying. She thinks she's going to be homeless because of your stunt last night. Just pay the $2,200 and we can put this behind us. Don't be the reason she ends up on the street." I didn't reply. Instead, I called the new property manager I had hired an hour ago. "This is Matilda Bishop. I want the eviction notice served to Winton's office by noon, and send a separate courier to the condo, not for my mother, for the owner of the unit." I hung up and looked at Macy. "He wants to use her as a shield? Fine, let's see how he feels when I take away his armor." I stepped out of the car, Macy at my side, and walked towards my mother. She saw me and immediately began dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Matilda, honey," she sobbed as I approached. "It's been so hard. Winton told me you were angry." "Stop it, Mom," I said, my voice as cold as the marble at Belmont's. "I know about the house, I know about the rent, and I know you're not sick." She froze. The sobbing stopped instantly, replaced by a sharp, calculating look I recognized all too well. It was the same look Winton had. "I did what I had to do," she snapped, the mask of the fragile mother finally shattering. "Winton was in trouble. Family helps family." "Family doesn't steal from their own children to pay for a cousin's blackjack habit." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a set of keys. "I bought Winton's company this morning, Mom. I own this condo, and I own the family house on Oak Haven Lane."
You bought them? She asked, her eyes going wide. I did, and because I'm family, I'm going to give you a choice. You can keep living here, but you're going to tell the truth to Godfrey, Jessica, and the rest of them, or you can move back to the house, under my name, with my security. Before she could answer, a black sedan screeched to a halt at the curb. Winton bailed out, clutching a legal envelope. He looked like he'd been hit by a train. What did you do? He roared, waving the eviction notice. You bought my debt? That's illegal. It's business, Winton, I said, leaning down to pick up Macy. She tucked her head against my shoulder, watching him with calm detachment. And in business, when you can't pay your bills, someone else takes over the assets. Welcome to the real world.
Winton takes a step toward me, his face a contorted mask of fury. The legal envelope in his hand is crumpled, the white paper trembling. Mom stands between us, her gaze darting from her nephew's rage to my unwavering stare. You think you're so high and mighty, Winton sneers, his voice cracking. You think because you have a fancy office and a line of credit you can just come in and dismantle my life? I brought this family together while you were busy networking with strangers. You didn't bring them together, Winton, I say, my voice low and steady. You harvested them. You took Godfrey's pride, Jessica's loyalty, and Mom's only asset, and you burned it all to keep your own head above water. Macy lets out a soft, sharp bark, a period at the end of my sentence. Winton flinches. He looks at the Shih Tzu as if she's a witness he can't intimidate. I did it for us, he shouts, turning to Mom. Tell her, I told you we'd get it all back. One big score and we'd be back on top. We just needed a little more capital from Matilda. Mom's silence is the loudest thing in the driveway. She looks at the condo, the beige, sterile walls that Winton was charging her market rent for. Then she looks at me. For the first time, I see a flicker of genuine shame in her eyes. Or maybe it's just the realization that she picked the wrong horse. Is it true, Winton? She asks, her voice barely a whisper. Did you really lose the auction money for the ruby pendant at the tables? Winton's silence is his confession. He tries to muster a scowl, but it wilts. It was a sure thing, Auntie. The dealer was... Enough. I cut in. I take a step forward, the power dynamic in the driveway shifting entirely. Here is how this is going to go. Dawn is already at your office, Winton. She's changing the locks on the W Property Ventures building. Since I own the debt, I've moved for immediate receivership. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal items before security escorts you out. You can't do that. My records, Your records are now my evidence. And as for the rest of the family dinner crew, Jessica and Godfrey are getting a call from my legal team. They'll be informed that if they want to avoid being named as co-conspirators in a fraud investigation, they will return every cent you funneled to them over the last 6 months. I turn to Mom. The car is waiting. If you want to go back to Oak Haven Lane, get in. But know this, Dad's house is a Bishop Group property now. You live there as my guest, not my master. There will be no more traditions that involve my wallet. Mom looks at Winton, who is now frantically dialing numbers on his phone, likely finding that Carl and his other associates have already blocked his number. She looks at me, then at Macy. Slowly, she reaches out and touches my arm. Her hand is shaking. Matilda, I'm so sorry. I don't pull away, but I don't embrace her either. Trust isn't a light switch. It's a bridge that has to be rebuilt stone by stone. Get in the car, Mom, I say quietly. As she moves toward the SUV, Winton lets out a guttural scream of frustration. You'll regret this. You're alone, Matilda. You have nothing but that dog and a pile of money. I pause at the driver's side door. I look at Macy, sitting proudly in her harness, and then at the clear blue horizon of the city I conquered. I'd rather be alone with my integrity, I say, than in a room full of people like you. I climb in, the heavy door thudding shut with a sound of finality. As I pull away, I see Winton in the rearview mirror, a small, shrinking figure standing in the middle of a street he no longer owns.
Oakhaven Lane looks exactly the same, yet entirely different. The oak trees still cast long skeletal shadows across the driveway, but the air feels thinner. Mom sits in the passenger seat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She hasn't spoken since we left the condo. I put the car in park and look at the front door. This house was supposed to be my sanctuary. Instead, it became the prize in a game I didn't know I was playing. I'll have a crew come by tomorrow to change the codes, I say, my voice echoing in the quiet cabin. The security system will be linked directly to my office. No one enters without my digital signature. That includes Winton, Godfrey, and Jessica. I understand. Mom nods slowly. I hop out and open the back door for Macy. She jumps down, her paws hitting the gravel with a confident crunch. She doesn't hesitate. She trots straight to the front porch and sits by the door, waiting. She remembers this place, but she knows it belongs to me now. As I unlock the door, the smell of lemon polish and old books hits me. It's the smell of my childhood, but it's tainted. I walk into the living room and stop. The mantel is bare, the silver tea set is gone, even the heavy crystal vase that Dad bought for their 20th anniversary is missing. Where's everything, Mom? I ask, my heart hardening again. She walks in behind me, looking smaller than I've ever seen her. Winton, he said we needed to liquidate some assets to invest in the holding company. He said it was for my future. It was for his blackjack debt, I snap. I walk through the house, Macy at my heels. Every room is a graveyard of missing memories. They stripped the place. They didn't just sell the house, they sold the soul of it. I find myself in Dad's old study. The desk is still there, too heavy for Winton to move on his own, apparently. I run my hand over the dark wood. I remember sitting on the floor here, coloring while Dad worked on his blueprints. He always told me that a foundation is the most important part of any structure. If the foundation is cracked, the whole building is a lie. My phone vibrates. It's a notification from my bank. A transfer has been initiated. What is it? Mom asks, standing in the doorway. Jessica just returned her gift money, I say, looking at the screen. It seems she'd rather lose $15,000 than face a fraud deposition. Godfrey will be next. I look at her, really look at her. You're going to be lonely here, Mom, without their traditions and their noise. Are you sure this is what you want? I want to sleep in my own bed without Winton asking me for my social security check, she says, a spark of the old, sharp woman returning to her eyes. I was a fool, Matilda. I let my grief make me soft, and he used it like a crowbar. I don't hug her, not yet, but I do reach into my bag and pull out a spare key. Then stay, but the first time I see a designer shopping bag or a luxury car in this driveway that you didn't pay for yourself, you're out, do you understand? Yes, she whispers. I whistle for Macy. Come on, girl, we're going back to the city. I have a meeting with a liquidation specialist. I'm going to find every piece of silver Winton sold and bring it back. As I walk out, I don't look back at the house. I look forward toward the skyline. I'm not just a daughter anymore. I'm the one holding the keys.
The office is quiet at 3 a.m., the kind of silence that feels heavy and expensive. I'm sitting on the floor of my executive suite, surrounded by boxes of files Dawn recovered from Winton's office. Macy is curled up on her rug, her breathing steady, her paws twitching occasionally as she chases dream squirrels. I'm not looking for money anymore. I'm looking for the blood trail. Winton wasn't just gambling with his own life, he was using the Bishop family name as collateral for a series of predatory loans. I flip open a blue folder and see a name that makes my skin crawl. I pull my laptop closer and dig deeper. Winton had been using a shell company to buy properties from elderly neighbors on Oakhaven Lane, promising them life estates, but actually flipping the deeds to offshore accounts. He was a vulture in a tailored suit. He didn't just hurt us, Macy, I whisper. The Shih Tzu opens one eye as I walk to the window. He hurt everyone who trusted the name Dad spent 40 years building. The rage I felt at the restaurant was hot and sharp. This new feeling is cold. It's the feeling of a hunter who has finally found the den. I pick up the phone. It's time to call Carl again. Carl, I say when he picks up on the third ring, sounding groggy. I found the Oak Haven records. You knew Winton was flipping those deeds, didn't you? There's a long pause. Matilda, I just provide the capital. What the client does with the property is going to get you disbarred and imprisoned if you don't give me the location of the storage unit where he's keeping the liquidated assets, I interrupt. I know he didn't sell the tea set and the jewelry, Carl. He's holding them until the heat dies down. Give me the address and I'll forget I saw your signature on the bridge loans. 5 minutes later, I have an address in a gritty industrial district across the river. I grab my coat and whistle for Macy. She's up in an instant, her tail a blur of white fur. She knows the mission walk when she sees it. One last stop tonight, girl, I tell her. We drive through the empty streets, the city a ghost of itself. The storage facility is a maze of corrugated metal and flickering yellow lights. I find Unit 402. The lock is a heavy industrial beast, but I don't need a key. I have the bolt cutters Dawn left in my trunk. Snap! The door screeches upward. I click on my flashlight and the beam cuts through the dust. There it is, my life packed into cardboard boxes and plastic wrap. The mahogany desk's matching chair, Dad's collection of vintage compasses, and in a velvet-lined box on a folding table, the silver tea set. But there's something else, a small black ledger. I open it. It's not just Winton's debts, it's a list of every loan he gave to Jessica, Godfrey, and Melanie. He wasn't just helping them, he was blackmailing them. He held their secrets, debts, affairs, failed businesses, over their heads to keep them in line at those dinner families. I look down at Macy, who is sniffing a stack of old rugs. He didn't have a family, I realize, the truth settling in my gut. He had a deck of cards, and I just took the ace. My phone pings, a message from an unknown number. I know where you are, Matilda. Don't touch my stuff. I look toward the entrance of the facility. A pair of headlights is swinging into the lot. The headlights cut through the gloom of the storage facility like two predatory eyes. I don't panic. I don't run. I reach down and scoop Macy up, feeling her small heart thrumming against my palm. She doesn't bark. She's dead silent, her body tense, watching the light spill toward our open unit. Stay quiet, girl, I whisper. I step back into the shadows of Unit 402, my hand resting on the cold, velvet-lined box containing Dad's silver. The engine of the approaching car cuts out, leaving only the ticking of cooling metal and the distant hum of the freeway. A door slams. Footsteps, heavy, echoing, and hurried, approach. Matilda, I know you're in there. It isn't Winton. The voice is deeper, more desperate. It's Godfrey. He rounds the corner, his silk tie undone, his expensive suit jacket wrinkled. He looks like a man who hasn't slept in 48 hours. When he sees me standing in the doorway of the unit, he stops, gasping for air. Give me the ledger, Matilda, he says, his voice shaking. I saw you on the security feed from the office. I knew you'd find this place. So you're his errand boy now, Godfrey? I ask, my voice echoing off the corrugated steel. I thought you were the voice of reason at those dinners, or were you just the one Winton had the tightest leash on? You don't understand. Godfrey steps closer, his hands raised in a placating gesture that feels entirely fake. Winton is a snake, yes, but that ledger, it has things in it that would ruin more than just him. It would ruin Jessica. It would ruin Melanie. It would destroy what's left of our name. The name is already destroyed, Godfrey, I snap.
You all destroyed it when you sat in Belmont's and watched me be humiliated for the price of a steak. Macy lets out a low, vibrating growl from the crook of my arm. She sees what I see, Godfrey's eyes darting toward the black book sitting on the folding table behind me. Matilda, please, if those records get out, the IRS will be the least of our problems. Winton was moving money through my firm. I didn't know, not at first, but once I realized he already had the signatures. He trapped me. He didn't trap you. You were greedy, I counter. You wanted the sure thing he promised. You wanted the lifestyle without the work. I reach back, snagging the ledger. I hold it up. This book stays with me. It's my insurance policy. If any of you, Winton, you, Jessica, ever step a foot near my mother, my house, or my company again, I drop this on the district attorney's desk. You'd send your own blood to prison? Godfrey asks, his face pale in the flickering yellow light. I'm not sending family to prison, I say, stepping out of the unit and walking toward my car. I'm sending a group of white-collar criminals to justice. There's a difference. Godfrey starts to move toward me, his face twisting into something ugly. But before he can take 2 steps, the sound of a police siren wails in the distance, a calculated move I made the moment I left the office. I called in a burglary in progress at this address 10 minutes ago. I lie, my voice smooth as silk. I'd leave if I were you, Godfrey. You don't want to be caught at a crime scene with a trunk of stolen family heirlooms. Godfrey freezes. He looks at me, then at the glowing lights of the facility entrance. With a muffled curse, he turns and sprints back to his car. I watch him peel out, his tires screaming. I look down at Macy. She licks my chin, her tail giving a single satisfied wag. He was always the coward, I murmur. I turn back to the unit. I have a lot of work to do. I need to move these boxes to a place where Winton's shadow can never touch them. But as I look at the silver tea set, I realize the revenge is almost complete. I don't just have their money, I have their fear.
The morning sun is a cold, pale sliver over the city when I return to the office. I haven't slept, but the adrenaline flowing through my veins is better than any caffeine. Macy is curled up on the sofa in my executive suite, her head resting on a velvet pillow, finally succumbing to the exhaustion of our midnight heist. I sit at my desk and open the black ledger. It's a roadmap of greed. Winton wasn't just a gambler. He was a black hole, pulling everyone into his orbit. I pick up the phone. Dawn, get the legal team in the conference room and call Carl. Tell him the convenience fee just doubled if he wants to stay out of the deposition. 30 minutes later, the room is filled with the sharp scent of espresso and the quiet rustle of high-end paper. My lawyers, the best money can buy, are already circling the ledger like sharks. It's all here, my lead counsel, Sarah, says, tapping a line of figures. Winton was using your mother's identity to co-sign the bridge loans. He forged her signature on at least 3 of these property transfers. If we take this to the DA, he's looking at 15 to 20 years. I don't want a trial, I say, leaning back. I watch the dust motes dancing in the sunlight. A trial is messy. A trial gives him a platform to play the victim. I want a settlement. I want every asset he has left, the offshore accounts, the cars, the remaining W property holdings, transferred to a trust for the elderly residents he scammed on Oakhaven Lane. And for you? Sarah asks. I already have what I want. I look through the glass wall of the conference room at Macy, who has woken up and is now batting a stray tennis ball across the carpet. It's done, Macy, I murmur. But as I look at the final page of the ledger, I see one entry I missed, a transfer made only yesterday, to an account in Singapore. Winton isn't finished, he's running. The silence of the office is broken by the low, steady hum of the server room. I stare at the entry in the ledger, SGP-trans-9901. It's a wire transfer for $300,000, moved through a shell corporation called Cerulean Skies. He's smart, Macy, but he's desperate.
I whisper. Macy is sitting on my desk now, her head tilted as she watches the blinking cursor on my screen. She paws at a stray paperclip, a reminder that while the world is collapsing around my family, her world is still simple and honest. I pick up the phone and call Don. He moved the last of the liquid cash to Singapore. Trace the IP on the login for Cerulean Skies. I want to know exactly which hotel or terminal he used to authorize that sweep. Matilda, Don's voice is sharp. If he's already in the air, he's out of our jurisdiction. The Singapore authorities are strict, but without an active warrant? I don't need a warrant to make his life a living hell, I interrupt. I own his debt. I am his primary creditor. Under the terms of the receivership I filed this morning, any attempt to move assets is a felony. I'm not calling the police yet. I'm calling his bank. I spend the next 3 hours on encrypted lines. I talk to compliance officers in Zurich and branch managers in Marina Bay. By 8 a.m., the Singapore account is frozen pending investigation. Winton might be in the air, but when he lands, his golden parachute is going to be a lead weight. A soft knock at the door interrupts my focus. Mom is standing there. She's dressed in one of her old wool coats, her face pale, but her eyes clear. I took a car service, she says, stepping into the room. She looks around at the high-tech monitors and the wall of glass. I've never actually been up here, Matilda. It's overwhelming. It's a fortress, Mom, I say, leaning back. Macy hops off the desk and trots over to Mom, sniffing her hem. Mom reaches down and scratches her behind her ears. Winton called me from the airport. He was crying. He said you were heartless. He asked me for my emergency credit card number. My heart hardens. And? Mom reaches into her purse and pulls out a small plastic rectangle snapped in half. I told him I didn't have a daughter named Matilda anymore. I had a boss, and the boss said no. A small, genuine smile touches my lips. It's the first time in years I felt a real connection to her that wasn't filtered through guilt. He's going to land in a few hours, I say. He thinks he's starting over, but I've already bought the lease on the apartment he was eyeing. I've contacted the local firms. He's blacklisted before he even clears customs. What happens now? Mom asks. Now we wait for the final move, I say. I look at the tracking software on my screen. A small red dot is moving across a digital map of the Pacific. He's going to realize the money is gone, and when he does, he'll do what he always does. He'll call the person he thinks is the weakest link. My personal phone begins to glow on the desk. No caller ID. I look at Mom. I look at Macy. I slide the phone into the center of the desk and hit the speakerphone. Matilda? Winton's voice is distorted by the plane's satellite connection, but the panic is unmistakable. Matilda, listen to me. There's been a mistake. The account is locked. I'm stuck in transit. You have to fix this. I'm family. I lean toward the microphone, my voice a calm, rhythmic pulse. You aren't family, Winton. You're a liability, and I just wrote you off.
The silence on the line after my last words is heavy, broken only by the faint, mechanical hum of the satellite connection. Winton breathes into the phone, a ragged, desperate sound. "You can't do this," he stammers, the arrogance finally curdling into raw terror. "I'm in a foreign country, Matilda. I have nothing." "You have exactly what you gave me for 10 years, I reply, my voice steady as I watch the city skyline turn gold in the rising sun. "You have the consequences of your own choices. Goodbye, Winton." I tap the screen. The connection severs. I don't just block the number, I delete the contact entirely. The family folder in my phone is now empty, and for the first time in my life, that emptiness feels like freedom. I turn to Mom. She's watching the blank screen of my phone, her hand resting on Macy's head. The Shih Tzu is leaning against her, a bridge of warmth between the past and the future. "It's over," Mom whispers. "No," I say, walking over to the window and looking out at the world I've built. "The drama is over. The life starts now." 3 months later, the air on Oakhaven Lane is different. It's quiet, but it's no longer heavy.
I pull into the driveway, and before I can even kill the engine, Macy is scratching at the door, her tail a blur of excitement. I let her out, and she sprints across the lawn, heading straight for the porch where Mom is sitting in a rocking chair. The house looks alive again. I've spent the last 12 weeks tracking down the liquidated memories. The silver tea set is back on the sideboard, Dad's vintage compasses are back in his study, and the ruby pendant is back around Mom's neck. "You're late for dinner," Mom calls out, but this time there's a teasing lilt to her voice, not a sharp edge. "Traffic," I laugh, stepping onto the porch. We don't go to Belmont's, we go into the kitchen, where the smell of roasting garlic and fresh rosemary fills the air. I've hired a small team to help Mom with the house, but tonight she's the one at the stove. As we sit at the cherry wood table, the one with the scratches and the history, Macy settles onto her rug under the window. She's the guardian of our peace. My phone pings on the counter. It's a notification from Dawn. Winton has been deported back to the States to face the fraud charges. Jessica and Godfrey have moved to a different state, their reputations in the city vanished like smoke. I slide the phone into a drawer. "Everything okay?" Mom asks, setting a plate of homemade lasagna in front of me. I look at the table. I look at the woman who has finally learned to stand on her own 2 feet. I look at the dog who saw the truth when I was too blinded by loyalty to notice. "Everything is perfect," I say. I pick up my fork, savoring the simple, honest warmth of a meal that wasn't bought with a lie. I'm Matilda Bishop. I'm a CEO, a daughter, and a survivor. And for the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.